Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the vote on Rishi Sunak's Rwanda Safety Bill last night. As 37 Conservative MPs abstained, not enough to sink the bill at the third reading if they vote against, as Sunak won by a larger than anticipated margin of 43. What does this mean for the internal Tory party battle to come next month? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, no matter how you look at the results from last night, the Tory rebels did not get what they wanted. Now, I'd already discussed in multiple videos that it made sense for the far-right factions to let the bill go through yesterday in order to seek amendments, or at the very least to give themselves more time. Because they don't have anyone to challenge Sunak with right now. Why bring his government down now? They're not ready. But also, they wanted to be able to give Sunak a warning that he could not take votes for granted. Now, the results don't prove that Sunak can just expect his bill to pass at the third reading. A number of MPs have said that they will support the bill at this stage in order to get those amendments. So it may well be that if Sunak tries to stick with his bill in largely its current form, that rebels will indeed defeat it next month. But there's no obvious sign that this will be the case. Could easily be a bluff. Let's consider what happened yesterday. Rishi Sunak met with representatives from the major factions on the right of his party because he feared the vote being too close to call. He thought it would be so close. He made his climate minister come back from COP just to vote before going back again. It's like one person. He thought it could come down to that. Danny Kruger of the New Conservatives, one of the factions on the right, said that Sunak had to either pull the bill, commit to amendments at the dispatch box, not promise him there and then, say it in Parliament, or he would lose the vote. Well, Sunak didn't pull the bill. I haven't seen him commit to amendments at the dispatch box. And he won the vote by 43. Mark Francois chairs the once influential ERG faction. These are the guys who delivered record defeats to Theresa May's Brexit deal. Francois gave fewer options than Kruger. He said the bill should be pulled, start again. If not, he said his group could not support it. Now, he did make clear in that case he would mean abstaining, not voting against. But between them, this is just two factions on the right. Between them, the ERG and New Conservatives represent about 80 MPs as far as I can tell. So it is the bulk of the right of the party. It's about 80 MPs all told. Yet only 37 Tory MPs abstained and none voted against. And not all of those who abstained were on the right of the party. There were a smattering of others. You know, it may be that some of them were abstaining on the basis that Bill already goes too far, like Alex Sharma. Some may just have had prior engagements and were ignoring the three-line whip, thinking, no, I arranged this ages ago, sod you. So the MPs from the ERG and New Conservatives, who were actually abstaining in protest, represented a minority of their membership. Now, just for a bit of context, recall the Windsor Framework vote earlier this year. The ERG Star Chamber said that the motion should be opposed. They actively called upon their members to vote against it. Yet fewer than half did. Way fewer than half did, in fact. This exposed the ERG as being deeply divided. So when Mark Francois, the chair of the group, talked about not supporting the bill, you could already be forgiven for being wary given the impotence he displayed before. Indeed, yesterday or the day before, that the fact that Mark Francois is chipping away like this doesn't really mean a great deal. Other than the fact that other factions are chuntering now. So maybe the collective threat was real. But no. Now, sure, it's possible that a lot of those MPs voting in favour of the bill yesterday are just doing so in anticipation of amendments. And if they don't get those amendments, then they'll vote against it. But as I discussed previously, if they wanted to put Sunak under pressure to make those amendments, they would have made sure the vote only just squeaked through. The implicit threat needed to be that if the abstentions turned into votes against, then the bill would be defeated at the third reading. They needed to say to Sunak, we are not happy with this bill as it is, and we are prepared to let it fail now But if you change it, then we'll see. Now, if every one of those Tory abstentions from last night had been votes against, Sunak would still have won the vote. That would have been a tight margin, but he still would have won. So what's clear now is that, yes, Sunak has a serious discipline problem with his party. He cannot reliably get legislation through the House, and he certainly can't reliably get this legislation through the House, and he may well have to battle to get it through the third reading next month. But it is equally clear that the factions on the right of the party are divided as well. And I don't just mean that the right of the party is divided because there are so many factions amongst them. I mean it's clear there are divisions within those tribes. Members of both the ERG and New Conservatives, which are the two most prominent, refused to take the lead of their chairs last night. Both Kruger and Francois were clear about what they wanted their members to do, and they were roundly ignored. And I'll tell you something else that's interesting. Look at the details. So, Suella Braverman abstained. No great surprise there. But Priti Patel and Ranil Jayawardena, they voted in favour. Now, I've already discussed how there are reports that the various far-right factions are willing to challenge Sunak. They're absolutely ready to bring him down, so we're told. But they won't move until they have agreed a common candidate. Otherwise, they'll just end up knocking out their own candidates by splitting the votes on the right of the party. So then they end up with a new leader, but one who, from their point of view, is just as useless as Sunak. But Braverman's pissed off so many on the right of the party that she can't realistically be considered a likely candidate. Patel and Jayawardena have been named as possible compromise candidates. And they both voted in favour of the bill, as did the majority of the just over 100 Tory MPs considered to be on the right of the party. Now, this is interesting. First of all, it means that Patel and Jayawardena are in touch with more of those MPs than Braverman. But it also makes you wonder what their plans may be for next month. If they have serious ambitions to replace Sunak, are those ambitions for this side of the election or afterwards? If they want to replace him sooner rather than later, they need to decide how it's best to do that. Is it better to defeat the bill at the third reading next month? Then they could bring Sunak down quite quickly. Or is it better to wait for the Lords to block it and then blame Sunak for the failure? The problem with the first tactic is it works very quickly, but they risk being blamed for blocking the stop the boats policy that they say they want. The problem with the second option is it may take a very long time. The Lords may not defeat the bill out of hand. They may just hold the legislation up while they try to work on amendments, giving it a slow death over many months. But I'll tell you what I can see happening here. I can see Sunak trying to offer up an amendment which would do nothing in practice, but make it look like he was addressing concerns. He already did this with the Windsor Framework, so he has form. It will then be up to the majority of the far right to decide whether they want to bring Sunak down next month, citing an unworkable bill, because they'll have the evidence for that from the committee stage. Or do they want to give him enough rope to hang himself in order to take over the party more securely after the election? So that after the election they say, look, we went along with them, the socialists, as they're calling Rishi Sunak a socialist, the socialists as they call him, we let them in charge, look, they made a mess of it, we had our worst defeat ever, so now we need to have the serious Tories back in charge. So they might be doing it for that purpose. I don't know. I cannot say what their strategy is. I can't read their minds, and they don't talk to me. It's possible they don't really have a strategy because they're so divided. Any strategy they have has to get common agreement. Because even if they got all of those factions on the far right to all agree on a common strategy, that still just represents a third of the parliamentary party. So what I will say is that on the strength of the breakdown of the votes last night, notable figures on the far right, such as Suella Braverman, Mark Francois, Bill Cash, Danny Kruger, Miriam Case, they voted against it. They were in the minority of their own tribes. So they are not in control of even their own factions. Even if they were prepared to let the bill pass the second reading, and Kruger at least made it clear he did not want that, then they should have at least been able to arrange for enough abstentions to make Sunak sweat. They didn't. Kruger, Braverman and Francois are not even leading their own tribes right now. Simply doesn't seem credible that they'll be deciding what happens next month. If Sunak gets his bill through the third reading, it now sounds like it's because the far right are too divided for it to be worth their while challenging him. Because what happens if they challenge him while they're divided? They damage the Conservative reputation, which means damaging their own election chances, and for what? They won't be able to replace him. Now, if Sunak doesn't get that bill through, it will be because of manoeuvres by those who supported the bill last night, like Patel, like Jayawardena. It won't be Braverman or Kruger. Certainly won't be Mark Francois. Last night, despite the clear desperation on the part of Rishi Sunak, he really thought it would go down to the wire. He was that desperate. Yet, it was the far right that blinked. That is likely to give Sunak confidence that he does not need to amend his bill by that much to get it through. Now, it would be vaguely funny if this ends up being a terrible miscalculation, that he resists major changes on the basis that he won the second reading so handsomely, and then the bill ends up being defeated in the Commons because he calls their bluff. But if that miscalculation does occur, it is because the far right failed to fire a serious shot across his bows. But we shall see. There are lots of ambitious people positioning for next month's showdown. All of them will want, to position themselves with a look to getting more power later on, whether sooner or later. And very few of them are really tactically adept. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.